Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the distribution class. You can see a new effect here. We've got Geoff in Texas. I'm here with Gardner from Point Blank Distribution. And so we're having the dual location session tonight. So I'm going to let Geoff kick it off, and I'm just going to be sitting here with Aaron listening to see what exciting things I can learn.
Okay, well, thanks, boss. Nice to have everybody here tonight. First of all, as we get into tonight's class, I want to say how much I've enjoyed this past week, your comments on the Switch video and the assignment for this past week. I thought they were well done, well thought out. Y'all came up with some great ideas on what should have been done, and it was really enjoyable for me to read those and hear your comments on it. And I hope you learned something from that video about the quality of a product and what it means to the survival of a brewery. It's really a sad story, as you all have learned. And to take it one step further, to tell you a little bit about it, that particular story on Schlitz is now a case study at midterm at Harvard in their MBA program, and it's called How to Kill a Billion-Dollar Business. So I hope you got something out of that, and thanks again for your support. Now today...
Can I put in one comment? Everybody knows that that's my family brewery, so I think Geoff did that to pain me.
Well, I don't know if they know this, but I was the 7th largest Schlitz distributor in the world, and it pains me because I lost it because of that. So I guess I could tell you, doctor, I feel your pain. Well, we're fortunate today to have Aaron with us from Point Blank Distributing in Portland, craft distributor, been in business for the better part of a decade or so. We're going to ask him some questions. He's going to hopefully give us an overview of what his business is about, what he looks for when he looks at not only a new product, whether it's a beer, a craft, a cider, or and some other things. He does have some NAs and some interesting non-alcoholics products that are, you would say, consistent with alcoholic beverages. We'll get a little bit on that. Hopefully we have time. But it's going to be a real insight that you're going to get to see on an alternative to the big boys as you try to expand your distribution and you look at your options going into a market. You think somewhat differently, that you don't have to look at an AB house or a Miller Coors house or even a wine and spirits house if the option exists. So why don't we start off with, what am I here? Why don't we start off with, I'm getting feedback. Aaron, can you give us a little overview of how you got into Point Blank, how you started it, why you did it, and maybe give us a little idea of some of the challenges you had when you started out?
Well, we started in 2003. I had been working for a very large distributor here in Portland that was a Miller house before the Miller Coors merger, so it was just Miller. And they had some craft beer, and I worked for about 10 years from merchandising, delivery, sales. One day decided that I thought I could do this on my own. One of the frustrations I had working for the large distributor was a focus on the bigger brands, and I was such a big fan of craft beer that I felt there's those smaller breweries that just weren't getting attention. So got with a business partner and started point blank to focus on craft beer, craft breweries that were doing, you know, small barrel amounts that need to be hand sold, that, you know, we weren't worried about having neons everywhere or, you know, bulletin boards on the side of the highway. It was all about the beer. So that's how it started, and it's grown from there.
You start out all by yourself?
There was two of us, myself and my business partner, one van. We had 2 brands to start with, which was a little tough. We had Anderson Valley Brewing Company out of California, and we had Terminal Gravity Brewing out of Enterprise, Oregon. We slowly started picking up brands, which can be difficult in the state because of franchise laws and stuff. So you're looking to bring brands into the state, but we quickly were picking up brands left and right. We found that there were breweries wanting to come into the state of Oregon that didn't like the options that were currently available, because most of the distributors were, you know, run by, you know, either Anheuser-Busch, Miller, or Coors. So we weren't the first craft beer distributor in Portland, but we were the only one at that time. The other ones had either started too soon and didn't make it, or they were purchased by the large distributors.
So sort of like a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come, huh?
Very much like that. We were incredibly fortunate. The timing was perfect. People were looking for something different, and we were able to provide that. Along with service was a big issue for us. You know, we would have beer to most accounts within 24 hours of ordering. You know, next day to service, which we still do, you know, 11, 12 years later, for the most part, which the other distributors weren't willing to do because it didn't make much business sense. But we were desperate.
Well, there's a question. What's been the most successful?
It's the most successful brand for us has changed throughout the years. I mean, originally Terminal Gravity was by far our most dominant brand. You know, other brands have come through like Laurelwood or Double Mountain. Currently, Boneyard is number one by far. We still do really well with some of the other ones, but Boneyard currently in the last year and a half, 2 years, has been extremely dominant. So
that RPM is the best IPA I have ever had in my life.
Incredible! It's great beer.
It is unbelievable. Having said that, let's move on. I got a question. You made a statement on the 24-hour turnaround to the marketplace. Let me do Columbia or Mount Hood or whatever they call themselves now and so forth. Do they do a 48-hour turnaround? And you do the 24?
They didn't really have a turnaround. They had scheduled set delivery dates for their customers. So if you were a Tuesday, Friday, or some customers only got once every 3 weeks, some were once a month. Just it was totally dependent on the volume that a customer was doing. So where we became successful were a lot of small, especially white tablecloth bars that weren't really focused on beer because no one paid attention. The sales reps were paying attention to it because the volume wasn't there. We paid attention to it. So we were able to, you know, even if it was 4 or 5 different beers on tap, we were able to get most of them because of the service level. You know, if they call us, we'd be there the next day. And the quality of our products as well. Where the other distributors, you only sell a keg or 2 a week, we'll see you every 3 weeks. And which made it incredibly easy for us to just take that business away.
Okay, guys, listen to Aaron, because what he's offering, what he's saying is that there's a real point of difference between his business model and the big boys. Big boys maybe Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but he's doing 24 hours, which is a huge point of difference between the big boys and the small craft guys. He's providing a service, they're not. So this is something to put in the mix as you go through this process in deciding which direction to go.
So should we take the question from Courtney? What makes a brand successful from a distributor's point of view?
Well,
yeah, we're gonna. That's a detailed question there.
Yeah, that's a big question. I can take it now, or we can. It's up to you.
Let's go through this. Courtney, if you stick with us, we'll get into that quite a bit. If that's okay. Okay, good. Okay. On potential new craft vendors. Okay, Aaron, when you started out, I'm guessing with your first couple of vendors, you were just happy to get some good quality vendors, right?
Correct.
And so now that
go ahead.
Now that you're established, and now that you've made headways into the market, when you get contacted by a potential new vendor in the marketplace,
mm-hmm.
Can you take us through the steps, the class through the steps that you would look at a potential new vendor in determining what they need to provide for you to seriously consider them, adding them to your portfolio of fine products?
In where we are today as a company, the first thing we ask for is we want samples. We always want to know what the liquid is. We want to know what the beer is. We want to know how good the quality is. And that's first and foremost. If we try the product and they don't taste very good, we really don't move on much after that. Second is packaging for the, as far as if they are doing 22s or 6-packs, what do they look like? How much time and effort were put into the marketing of the brand. We see a lot of breweries that skimp in this area, especially smaller breweries that are trying to get started. And it's not to be offensive, but it almost looks like their high school kid made it on a software program. So it's critical. It really is. The packaging has to be there. It doesn't matter if the price is right, the liquids are great. If people aren't going to pull it from the shelf, it's never going to work. So the quality of the product is one, packaging number two. Yep.
Okay, question is, the packaging has to tell a story. Am I not correct to you? I mean, they got to say something about the brand, what it's all about.
Yeah, telling a story is great. The artwork is important, but correct. I mean, the telling the story of the product, it says a lot of things. It's not everything, but it's one of the top 3 things I would say, and I could probably tell the top 5. I mean, I'm not a marketing specialist, but it has to look good, and it has to look like a quality product in this day and age.
Right.
You establish a distant limit?
Yeah, so on the question that just came up from Christian, yes, we would really, especially at the beginning, we to make ourselves relevant in the market, we would do whatever it took. We certainly now, we have a pretty large area that will do 24, next day delivery. But as you get larger, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So if there is an account 50 miles away, and we just went there that day, they might have to wait a few days. Or we'll ask a sales rep, hey, you're going to be back in that area in a couple days. Would you mind taking the product as opposed to going on the traditional delivery truck? So that's usually, and that goes also back to how sales reps are managing their accounts. If people constantly, calling in from that far away, then there's another issue. But for the most part, we do whatever we can within reason. But on occasion, we lose money to make the customer happy. If it's a truly emergency and something bad happened, or maybe it was a mistake on our end where they didn't, get the product they wanted. So, but yeah, we will do that.
But also, you have multiple warehouses in the state, don't you?
We do, but we have several. I mean, we have one based in Portland, and we easily go 60 to 80 miles away to some of our customers, and then we have a few others throughout the state. One in Eugene, Oregon, and one in Bend, Oregon, which we service from as well.
So if I had a beer, I brought to you and you deemed it part of your portfolio, you could actually service the state, basically the big metropolitan parts of the state.
Yeah, you fish where the fish are. We have in the big parts, and then we work with sub distributors, or like Southern Oregon, for example, Ashland, Medford, Klamath Falls. We work with another distributor as a partnership. They cover down south. We kind of, our boundaries kind of butt together, and they represent our brands for us down there.
So class, what Aaron is saying is that he acts as a master distributor for the state, and he will sub some of the brands out to some smaller markets in the state as a master distributor.
Yes.
Okay, so there's another question here related. Do you find your customers tend to create a certain brand affinity when all labels on a certain brand have a consistent theme?
Not very often. We've had a customer that has a bird feed store, a bird shop, and a bottle shop. So they're like logos or brands that have birds on them. But other than that, no.
It's so Portlandia.
Yeah, it's.
I give up. I give up.
Unless there's something specific, maybe geographical. The name of the brewery happens to be the name of a town. I can see it, but it's not that often.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Now that let's say that you decided to take on a new product and it meets your quality criteria and your other basic criteria about packaging and so forth. How do you go about setting the initial rollout goals for volume, for distribution, marketing, promotions, incentive, and of course, recommended pricing, and then also the chain portion of it? How does all that come into play? And put that sort of in your words, from a distributor perspective to a potential vendor.
So the volume and distribution is typically based on the size of the brewery, what they're set up to do. If we have a brewery that's working in a small system, maybe a 5 or 7 barrel system, they're not going to have enough product to go to chains. They're not going to have a product to expand everywhere. We'll usually start on maybe a slower growth, more focus on a few parts of town and slowly grow it until they can raise enough revenue to keep building their brewery to increase the volume. If it's a brewery that's already well established, they have plenty of product, then it's a different. Then we start working it with marketing, promotional items. We usually don't do incentives right away, but we do them, and pricing. And so pricing is obviously when you start talking about volume, it's a factor. There's promotional pricing, like you do what we call post-off pricing in the industry, where you're discounting your product, which creates a little sales tag at a grocery store. How often you do those items? If you have local sales reps, will be the market to help with in-store demos, right along with our sales reps to help promote it. So those are kind of it can change from one brewery from another, but it's usually based on what they're capable of doing. Less about what we can do for them, but how much product they can provide us, and then the support that comes.
Yeah, good point. Now, on pricing, let me ask you, do you have a minimum requirement on your margins?
Typically, we're on the lower side of the industry. We're about 25% is the minimum we really would like to get. We prefer 27 to 29, 30 if possible.
Is that 25% net?
Yes. About that. We figure our latent cost, tax, freight, and then we throw the margin on top of that. And then from there we'll look into if a vendor wants to they want to say, hey, I have this 22-ounce package, I want it $4.99 on the shelf per bottle. we can usually do the math backwards to get them to where this is what we need you to do, this is what the price needs to hit our dock at. So.
What did I say, Doc? It all goes backwards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Courtney's got a question.
Oh, no. So if we're away from the East Coast, we just usually most of the stuff from the East Coast we get are from importers, and they usually base themselves on the East Coast. They bring the product over. We just arrange. They usually hold them at like a warehouse, like a fulfillment warehouse. We place the orders. We hire the trucking companies and bring it out. It's fairly simple.
Those are for your, like, the German brands and things like that?
Yeah, a lot of the German brands, Belgian beers. Most of them do East Coast. There's a few that have some West Coast warehouses, but mostly East Coast. We don't have a lot of East Coast craft beer out here in Portland, so there's not a lot of that opportunity.
Ciders? Don't you have some of the East Coast ciders? Maybe not.
Not really. And then like we work with like Shipyard or Sea Dog that are out of Portland, Maine, but they work with an importer to help them with distribution. So we pick it all from one location.
Okay, great. And thanks, Chris, for he's getting at me for a math problem that we had.
Well, Chris, we're going to get into that 99-cent thing during our pricing class coming up too. So he's not too far off on that one.
We always look at 99 and 49.
Okay, there's a pricing class.
Specialized software demand planning. We just recently, the last 2 years, switched to a new software program called VIP, which is widely used in the industry. We started with QuickBooks, which is, everybody uses QuickBooks with solo businesses. But as we grew, it didn't give us the information we wanted out of it. So VIP, we signed up, it'll be 2 years in March, and so it helps us forecast, and the forecasting tools are what we use the most. So it can, based on our current, inventory, depletion, sales, pricing, promotional pricing, it almost can tell you what you should probably be ordering with your current sales rates. So it can be handy, but we don't totally trust it. We just use the guideline. And CDOC.
Well, let me say something. VIP, guys, is called Vermont Information Processing. It is a user-friendly program. You can design the reports that you want through the program. It's firewalled into the distributor's operation. So you can get real-time numbers as needed, whether it's inventory, sales, dollars, and you can actually monitor invoices through VIP too. So it's one of the most effective programs available out there today, and the price of it is based on the volume that's done, that you do.
Do you provide the info to the breweries to assist them in planning their production? Yes.
Well, what VIP offers is a brewery, and it's a slight cost, I think $200, $250 a year, where a brewery can log on to our VIP, have full access to it. They can only see their information. It shows inventory, sales. Because we use VIP server, there's a 2-day lag time. We're not big enough quite yet to have our own server, which would be instant information. So there's a 2-day lag time, but for the most part, they can log in and see what's being sold and active inventory, as it goes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you use weeks of covered base you're ordering on?
I'm not sure if I understand the question completely.
Yeah, Matt, can you explain that a little better? Or a little differently so we understand? Yes, we'll go. Do you want me to switch the slide, Geoff? No?
Yeah, please.
Okay, there you go. Matt, yes, we do look at that. Not as much as we should, but the intent is there. Look at how much we often have, if we have, so we will keep larger amounts of inventory in hand based on sales and availability. Like, let's say it's a German import, we're ordering containers, it takes 2 months to get here. If we're off by 3 weeks, we're out for 3 weeks. So we'll keep 30 to 60 days of inventory on hand at all times. With our local stuff, it's so automatic and so close, we don't normally do that. But yeah, we definitely look at keeping certain weeks of inventory on hand based on availability of product.
Good. How do you manage?
Well, fortunately, with the products that we have, where we keep that kind of product on hand, let's say, I mean, I'll be specific with the brand Westapher from Germany. It's pasteurized. It has a year-long shelf life. So when it's getting here, it still has 10 months to go. Another brand, which is not craft, we do have one industrial beer, which is Iron City from Pittsburgh Brewing Company. Same scenario where they have long shelf life. So and we're constantly ordering containers on top of containers. So we might be getting one and like 3 weeks later, another one shows up. So we're constantly rotating it in. So it's keeps from code dates from going out of code. But we wouldn't be able to do that with a small craft brewery, in Michigan that we need to ship up a bunch out. It wouldn't work. So.
3 months, then they suck.
Yeah. I mean, the hops drop off almost instantly. I mean, you have a beer fresh from a brewery, and then you have it, 2 weeks later at a bar. They drop off. But most people can't tell. But
only Ryan can tell. No.
We have a brewery that we work with here locally that if it's not sold in 6 weeks, they buy it back from us because they want their hoppy beers to be as fresh as possible. It's tough to do. It's pretty expensive.
Yes, master pass.
Yeah.
So what about Geoff? Should we go to the next question?
Yeah, I just sitting there, listen to the question. Aaron, now that you've got a new product or products in your portfolio, how often do you see the key brewery reps, and how do they go about reviewing the current results and future programming, and what do you do with them to modify your goals if you need to do that?
We see most of our local folks probably once a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, just depending on what's going on at the time. Some we want to see more, some we want to see that often. It's whether it's personalities or whatnot. But I would say we'd like to see them at least once a month to know what's going on. And important for us is for them to follow up with us. The good reps that we work with are ones that we see on occasion. They're grabbing samples, they're setting stuff up in the market, and we're getting recaps, weekly recaps of what they're doing. It's so beneficial for us. They're communicating with our sales reps. They have a recap in the week that says, these are the accounts that I went to, here's the follow-up needed, spoke to, Joe's Bar, and they're really interested in my IPA, just to give our sales reps the ability to follow up and close the deal if needed, or hey, I set up a tasting at XYZ store, make sure that sales rep knows so he can order in extra product for the tasting.
Well, Ryan's asking a really good question here. How effective is it for your business to have a sales rep from your vendor in the marketplace?
It has an impact. I think the reps can actually create their own relationships with some of these customers. So if you have a rep in the market that really has a good relationship with customers, they're going to tend to stick, be loyal to that brand rep. We've had the opposite, where we recently in this last third quarter of 2014, where we had a rep that just was doing a horrible job, and we kept this isn't working. Went to their boss, and sadly, they lost their job, and sales went through the roof, and they had their best quarter ever because they were so disliked by the sales staff at my company and some of the customers because she was lazy. So nobody would want to do anything for her. When she was gone, sales skyrocketed, and it was nice because we had our year-end meeting with the owner, and we weren't getting beat up because the sales numbers were great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sad for someone.
Yes.
So with a vendor, when you go into your planning cycle, do you submit a plan for a new vendor, and how often do you do it? Annually? How does your planning cycle work, and what are the key components? And have you seen from any of the vendors 5-year goals or any type of long-term planning, or even yourself? I mean, you obviously started with a business plan. So how does your planning cycle work?
So I would say 70% of our vendors, I would say, actually have business plans or business meetings with us. You know, of those, you know, most of them we meet yearly. Usually we try to do our business plans in November, towards the end of November, first part of December, so we can, well, we try to do it before December because we have to get pricing set up for the next year. And December 1st, we have to get January pricing out. So we try to get yearly business meetings. On occasion, we have a few vendors, especially larger ones, that would like to have them quarterly. So we do that. Some don't really care about having a planning meeting, which, you know, I think they all should. I think it's important to have a business plan meeting every year with your distributor. You just need to, so you just know what you just have the conversations of what the trends are, what beers styles are starting to sell better. You know, to set up incentives. I think it's fairly critical. I highly recommend it, but we can't force people to sit down with us, even as nice as we are. So as far as, you know, future plans, we really don't. We have a few breweries that, you know, with their growth plans, they will say, like, you know, I need to be at 10,000 barrels this year, and our 5-year plan will be at 20,000, and what kind of things we can do to get there. But very few are thinking that far ahead. Very few.
Is it bigger ones that tend to do the long-term planning?
The bigger ones, they might, but since they work, if they're bigger, they're working with several distributors throughout the U.S. So it's not specific to one distributor. So, you know, they're working with all of them, and they probably have internal plans, but we rarely have a conversation with a vendor that's, you know, looking for a 5-year plan with us.
Well, let me ask you this: you mentioned the pricing set for the year in December that you would like to have, or you agreed to for the upcoming year. Let me ask you something too. Along with the pricing and ordering the product, do you have certain requirements regarding credit terms with your suppliers?
Well, we love 120 days, but we never get that. Your standard is 30 days, is a 30-day net. So we have different ones with different suppliers. It's usually specific to each vendor, but 30 days is the standard time frame. We have a few that are on 7, a few that are on 15. It just depends on the situation. I mean, we try to be good business partners. So, you know, since our cash flow typically is better than a startup brewery, you know, we've set up in our contracts where specifically there's one brewery that we pay COD for them for the first year. And then year 2, it's net 15. Year 3, it's net 30. It's usually opposite of what goes on, but, you know, it was the difference of them going with a different distributor. We were able to keep them because we were able to pay COD. And since we control the ordering, it's not that big, you know, like we don't have to order a ton of it. If it's a local brewery, we could pick up several times a week. So it didn't put us out too much. But typically, or the other option, which we've done several times, is the first order is cash up front to kind of help them out, and then we move to 15 on the second one, 30 on the third order. There's different ways to go about it, but 30 days is the standard business practice.
So what you're saying is that in the right circumstances, you might be negotiable going with a new vendor.
Yes. And at some point, if we're ordering a weekly basis anyway, it's a moot point because the money's we'll be writing them checks every week regardless because we're constantly getting deliveries. It's the initial, the initial ordering we start working with them.
Well, the other thing too is when you sell product to a retailer, you get paid in cash.
We do. We're COD in the state.
Right. There's no receivables.
Correct. And I don't know that we could have done what we've done without that being that way.
Right.
Just based on if you open a distribution company in a state where there's terms, you have to have a ton of working capital to, keep paying for fuel, labor, rent, all the other things, and then going after customers that, maybe aren't really good at paying on time. As it is now, we get a check, or we also use FinTech, which has been pretty good. Or just
one final question on this, because we're getting pretty deep into this, but when you do a post-off or a discount on 81 product, do you buy the product from the vendor at full price, bill back the vendor after the promotion is over with, or your money back, and does the vendor write you a check or does it send you a credit memo?
So we buy at full price. Once the post-op period is over, we send them a report, showing the sales, and then usually an invoice for that amount for their share of it. Most of them take it as a credit memo, and they take it off the next invoice. Some prefer to write us a check, but for the most part, it's a credit memo against the next invoice.
And you're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I think that explains a lot for them. Now, getting back to your business model, if the Portland market, and pardon me, it's been a few years since I actually worked in Portland, and I don't know how many total accounts in Greater Portland anymore, but theoretically, do you service all the accounts, or do you focus on only craft-centric accounts? I say that because I'm talking about the most over-indexed market for craft beer in the United States. So that may be a moot point, but do you service every retail account in the marketplace?
Well, we currently don't sell to every account. Not even close. There's plenty of accounts that we don't sell to. Anybody with a liquor license and some money, we will sell them beer. So that, we're not picky. However, we don't necessarily aggressively go after certain customers that they clearly you can just walk into a convenience store or a bar and you look what beer they're pouring and see whether they care about craft beer or not. And if they don't, fine, we have a few other products that we can sell to them. Like Iron City is a domestic type beer. We can, that was part of the reason we brought those beers on, is we could, that was our foot in the door for some places. And once we get in, our beer starts selling well, then we could maybe convince them to hey, give us one tap handle of craft beer and see what happens. Since the majority of people in this town drink craft beer. So we try not to judge customers, but we certainly aren't as aggressive with certain accounts as others.
So it's not a question of you're not servicing the entire market. It's a question of you being able to with your product portfolio at the moment.
Well, we can get product to any place that's in our footprint. We can get product to them. We just don't. I mean, we want to, but not everybody cares. Like again, you just don't. There are places that just don't care about craft beer. They want Bud and Bud Light and Coors, and maybe their idea of craft beer is a Blue Moon or a Shock Top, and it's not really what we consider to be craft beer. So their Budweiser guy gives them, free tickets or takes them fishing or hunting, or so it's not worth it to them to upset their big guy.
You don't have any beer at the Portland Trailblazers?
No, we sell Laurelwood over to the Moda Center.
Good. Well, how about the VFW?
The VFW, yeah, most of the VFWs, they don't care about craft beer.
Oh, okay.
They're still upset they can't get Schlitz anymore.
Hey, we don't want to go there, okay? We just sit down one, okay? No offense, Mellie. Okay, in your contract negotiations, the language in your contract with your vendor, are you looking for some specific languages, or is there some languages that you will not accept?
Well, we won't accept any language that is by itself illegal in the state. We've seen contracts come across my desk that what they've asked for, we just don't do, whether it's cleaning, they expect us to clean draft lines, which we can't do in the state of Oregon. So we look for things like that. Most of them are pretty cut and dry. The one that we provide now is just specific on terms, reporting. The Oregon statutes pretty much cover everything legally. The only thing that we've been looking to add, or we've been adding to our contracts, is a buyout clause. So, which, this is again specific to the state of Oregon. A brewery just can't pick up and leave from one distributor to another. They're bound by the statutes. So what we're trying to provide is an out to a vendor that they want to leave. If we agree to, and we both agree to part ways, that has to be there. But it's set in stone that the new distributor knows what he has to pay to get that brand. So right now, if a brand leaves, it goes into negotiations between the distributor. If the guy who just recently purchased a brand from another distributor, we go back and forth till we come up with something that's agreeable, and usually somebody's upset, somebody's got lawyers involved. It's just, I was trying to create a way to, listen, if you want out and I agreed to let you out, this is the multiplier based on your sales, based on your percentage of the business with my company, and you're free to go. And that way there's no hard feelings, there's no lawyers, there's no crying, there's no burning of everything. So it can become pretty emotional at times when there's, especially with larger brands that you work really hard for, and they want to leave you, and vice versa, where brands have come to us and their last distributor was pretty upset due to the fact that they felt they worked really hard and I can't believe you want to do this to me type of scenario. But brands change hands monthly.
Brands change hands like we change our pants.
The grass is always greener,
That's not. I know what you're saying, but that's not always the case.
Right. Well, there's definitely stories to, that support both sides.
Well, I got 1,000 of them. At what point did you yourself decide that you don't want a vendor anymore? Let's say a brand isn't performing for you. What's the criteria that you have, and how do you go about handling it?
We evaluate it every year. We take a look at what are the bottom brands, what are the brands that aren't performing. We'll look at sales, most importantly. What are they doing? Are the sales low, but they're really trying? They have a rep in the market. They're trying to make it forward. If maybe the quality has gone downhill. I parted ways with the brewery just because I didn't get along well with the other owner. We just didn't see eye to eye, and didn't want my life to be that complicated, so I've invited them to look for a new distribution partner, and you know, we can negotiate the terms. But we do let brands just go, just walk away. Just, you can go. You know, they haven't really performed, and we're not interested in keeping anybody down. I mean, we support the industry, so we don't want to. You know, if there's a brewery that's not working, it's over for us. You can just go away and just find a new home. Good luck.
That's just, I think they've
disqualified. Yeah, discontinued.
Yeah, DQ is disqualified or discontinued. Thank you, Ryan.
Well, we already talked about this. If a vendor decides to terminate, you've already said that you try to work out a multiplier of GP. I'm assuming is gross profit, 1 year's gross profit. Do you look at like 3, 4, 5 times?
We've done anywhere from 1 up to 4, 4.5. We haven't hit 5 yet, but I have some brands in my portfolio. It'd be 5, 6, 7 times multiplier, and that's why we set up the new contract. So if you're a large portion of our business, you would more than likely do the most monetary damage and lack of revenue if you were to leave. So this kind of makes up for it.
In your contract, I'm assuming that you have a paragraph in there that says that contract is subject to the Oregon State beer franchise laws.
Indeed, we do. We use it. We do have that. Sadly, at some level, those laws can get gray in certain areas, especially with the going back to the multiplier. It's not super clear. They have a suggestion, but it's not bound. So that's why we've been trying to add it, so we don't have to mess with it.
Well, that should be an addendum. The multiplier should be an addendum in your contract.
It is for the most part.
Yeah.
We used because the state laws were so strong. We didn't really. Our contract was basically a couple paragraphs, basically establishing territory, establishing terms, you know, everything, and basically stating, like you had mentioned, you know, this is all based on, you know, the Oregon laws. Where now we've, you know, taken a step further and, you know, add a little bit more protection for us.
So let's see, Chris has a question. Have you seen breweries you walked away from still be around?
Yeah.
Survive?
Yeah, some of them, you know, they'll find a new home in another distributor, or they'll just pull from the market. I mean, most of the ones that are on the lower tier, they're from out of state. So they'll usually, they'll just pull out or give up, and they'll just go back to the place that they came from and give up on Oregon. Oregon's an incredibly tough market.
For out-of-staters.
Yeah, for out-of-state, it's incredibly tough. I also have a distribution company based in Seattle, and we share several brands, and those brands that do okay here in Oregon, and they're great beers, but Seattle, where that distribution company is much smaller, does 5 times the business with them. And then on the flip side, there's some Oregon brands that we do incredibly well with here, which they hardly even touch up there.
Yeah, everybody's local to the area.
Yeah.
Let's see, Ryan's asking if you've noticed an increase in the amount of sour beer demand that consumers are wanting.
There's certainly been an increase. It's slowed down, I'd say a little bit, but it's still popular. As far as a brewery to build a brand around, yeah, breweries are doing it now. There's Logsdon, there's Trinity out of Colorado, Cascade. The problem is, the only significant problem is, that style is very unique to a lot of people. Don't care for them. It's not a huge volume product, so you need to make sure it's good, because you're going to need to demand a lot of money to make margin on it. And if it's not a great product and you have to sell it for more because you need that margin, it's not going to do well. And yes, Ryan, it's alpha.
Yeah.
We go back to Courtney's question about what makes a brand successful from the distributor's perspective. For you, a brand that you might.
Well, it just goes back to what makes it successful is the quality of the product. Maybe they have style that's not overly done, which is it's harder and harder to do. To be specific, like Double Mountain, when they had IRA, which is really kind of the first brewery in this town to really use that. I mean, they kind of developed that on their own style, which was similar to other styles, but no one named a beer IRA, and people went crazy for it, and it really put them on the map. So that's something. I've answered everything.
Ryan has another question. True that Alpha does not require a contract to start with a vendor.
No, we do. We do. We didn't necessarily start. Alpha didn't start with, because the laws in Washington are different. They really they're not as strong, so you really don't need. I mean, the contracts were they didn't mean anything because we didn't have the laws. But what we've learned now is every other distributor in Washington does have contracts. We were the only one that really wasn't doing it. So now we asked that all vendors that sign up with Alpha sign a contract, because they're going to have to any other distributor they go to.
Let's see, we still have a few more minutes. Any other questions? You guys have been asking.
I'm answering questions on this. If you don't have a contract, actually, there are some vendors which will just give you an appointment letter. It just says, point blank, distributing in Clackamas, Multnomah counties is our distributor, subject to the laws of the franchise law of the state of Oregon, and that's good enough. I mean, that's fine. But it limits your legal maneuverability, if you will, or rights by doing that. But you can do it. I mean, it's fine. And as a matter of fact, most distributors like that.
We did it that way for years until what would cause us the new contract was running into a few divorces from vendors that kind of made us rethink it. And again, brands that we really wanted to come our way, but the contracts kind of got in the way and never worked out.
One last question. If you pick up old beer in the marketplace, who's responsible and how do you handle that?
Well, there's two parts to that. If the cause of the old beer today was being shipped old to us, that already had, which happens, it's not if we don't catch it, but maybe a brewery sends us beer that's got 30 to 60 days on it, and we get out in the trade, it goes old, it's sold. We expect them to credit us at our laid-in cost. So not just the cost of the beer, but what we had to pay to get it here, including the freight and everything. Now, if there's a situation where we over-ordered or we didn't perform, our sales reps or merchandise were rotating, then we eat it. We just dump it and write it off.
How do you define old beer?
Old beer is based on whatever brewery establishes their beer to be old. I mean, if they say we have our beers are good for 90 days, our beers are good for 120 days, a year. It just depends on the brewery. But breweries either put like a brew date or a best by date, and that's usually how we kind of establish it.
And then once you get it, do you destroy it or do you send it back to the brewery?
Well, if we there's some scenarios where if we can catch it in time, let's say there's 30 days left on it, a lot of our breweries will take it back, and they can either ship it to maybe another distributor that's a bigger, or as far as like they're selling more of that specific style, or they can sell it at their brewery. Maybe they have a tasting room where they can kind of get rid of it because they don't necessarily want it out in the trade, and they'll usually credit us fully for it. So otherwise, OBRC, which was Crink back in the day, Oregon Beverage Return Center. They'll pick it up at our dock and destroy it for us.
You got Ryan. What's the minimum amount of turnaround time? What's your product? Once product hits your warehouse?
We don't necessarily have a minimum, but you want it to, I mean, as a vendor, you want it to be turning and burning, because we notice that beer's sitting around for a month, 2 months, we're more than likely we would probably slowly maybe not work with it anymore or discontinue it.
Ryan, typically, if you flip your inventory 12 times a year, that's once a month. But the target goal for most distributors is to flip it 20 times a year.
It's kind of like what they call, basically first. Ultimately, if I'm out of a beer on Monday morning and that shipment comes in Monday afternoon, I'm doing that's what I want.
Just in time?
Yeah, just in time.
Have you traded accounts with another distributor for the benefit of all three parties, i.e. the brewery and both distributors?
So if you're saying trading accounts, like trading...
trade a vendor.
Trade a vendor?
I think that's what you mean.
Yeah, well, we do that. We prefer to trade as opposed to getting cash, because the tax man takes up a lot of that money. So if we were to get, for even numbers, like $100,000 for a brand, well, between the governments we work with, there's $35,000 goes right out the door. So recently we had a scenario where there's a brand that wanted to leave us to go to the distributor. They had some products that we wanted, so we took that time and opportunity to swap brands at like value, and nobody gets dinged with taxes, and it works out.
Everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy. It actually makes things go smoother, because nobody feels that they lost.
Guys, here I want to say, Aaron mentioned one thing here about JIT and inventory. Remember this. Now, this in his case, this is a good thing, because if he sells, say, a container of beer a month, 1,000 cases of a product a month, and he's doing JIT, in essence, if you're giving him 30 days credit terms, he's actually making money on you. Is what he's doing. But that's not bad, because the benefit to you is that the beer that he's selling in the marketplace is as fresh a beer as that he can possibly get to the consumer. So it turns out, plus the fact he's only working on 25% margins, which again is a good thing for you too. But also remember that, because if he's not carrying recommended inventory levels in JIT, he's working on your money.
We often, in the past, not often, but in the past, we joke to some of our breweries, like, yeah, we use the profit of your brewery, pay for all this other stuff. Yeah, 2 or 3 breweries.
There you go.
So we got one last question.
There you go.
To wrap it up, from Robert, if I'm going out doing sales for my company, say I find a bar that wants to set up an account, when it's all said and done, do I walk out the door and tell the distributor to get in touch with this place? How does the interaction work?
Yeah, that's exactly what you would do. You would, you walk into, a bar, maybe they don't work with, my company currently, and you're like, they're really interested in your brand, and just reach out to the sales rep in the area, or whoever your contact is with the distributor, and we follow up and then keep you in the loop. That just happened to us actually this week. Made a sales call to a small chain of convenience stores down south, based on the buyer ran into one of our breweries at a beer fest, and who's your distributor? So it's going to open up anywhere from 10 to 20 new accounts. So it works out great. It's all about communication.
That's great. Well, Geoff, I guess it's time for us to wrap it up with big thanks to Aaron for coming.
Yeah,
this is the first time on the wine show. You've all seen the tape, but he's never been live. Great job.
Yeah.
Geoff, his first time remote. He did a great job too.
Yeah.
We're not on St. Patrick's Day. We're on the 18th. No, we had to give up that. Bye,
Thanks again, Ryan.
Thanks, Geoff.
everybody. All right, we'll see y'all next time. Have a good night.